It all started on a quiet Saturday morning, the kind where the sun hits the water just right, and you think nothing can possibly go wrong. I was sipping coffee on the back porch, watching a pelican glide over the bay, when I noticed something strange near the edge of my dock. There, nailed to one of the posts, was a brand new, bright red "No Trespassing" sign. Bold letters. Fresh wood. Definitely not something I put up. I walked closer, confused, and that's when I saw her, Karen, HOA board member, neighborhood watchdog, and self-declared ruler of all things waterfront. She stood with arms crossed, sunglasses on, looking proud, like she'd just saved the world from a villain. The thing is, my dock isn't just a dock. It's a designated emergency landing point for the Coast Guard. That means it has to stay clear, always. It's been used during storms, medical evacuations, even a small fire once. Everyone around here knows that. Well, everyone except Karen, apparently. And now, with that sign posted and boats actively avoiding it, I started to worry. What if there was an emergency and they couldn't land? I tried reasoning with her, but she cut me off mid-sentence, claimed it was for safety, and said she had the authority to post the sign as part of a new dock beautification project. I had a feeling she didn't check with the Coast Guard or anyone else. For that matter, the situation was bigger than just a turf war. If the wrong person showed up and couldn't dock in time, the sign could literally cost lives. So I made a call, one that would change the course of this neighborhood feud forever. Because if Karen thought a piece of wood and some bold letters could stop the Coast Guard, she was in for one heck of a surprise. To understand how we got here, you've got to know a bit about Karen. She's not just your average neighbor with a strong opinion, she's the kind of person who prints out HOA bylaws and highlights them like they're ancient scrolls. Ever since she got on the board, things changed. We couldn't leave our trash bins out more than an hour, couldn't hang wind chimes without approval, and heaven forbid someone planted a bush that wasn't community approved. But the dock, that had always been left alone, mainly because it's not technically part of the HOA's jurisdiction. It sits right on the edge of federal water access, which made what she did even more bizarre. Karen's were on the dock didn't come out of nowhere. A few weeks back, there had been a Coast Guard chopper landing late at night during a water rescue. The lights, the noise, it rattled her. She complained at the next meeting, saying it disrupted her sleep and lowered the neighborhood's peace factor. No one took her seriously, but clearly, that didn't stop her from acting on her own.
By the next morning, things had already escalated. A second sign went up, this time on the side gate that led down to the dock. It read, "Private property, surveillance in use." That would have been funny if it wasn't so serious. Karen didn't own the dock. I did. And the dock's legal status as a Coast Guard landing zone made her actions not just overstepping it, made them dangerous. But Karen wasn't slowing down. She started taking photos of people near the dock, muttering about violators and keeping a logbook like she was some sort of harbor sheriff. Meanwhile, talked to a few neighbors, and it turns out I wasn't the only one feeling her pressure. Lisa, who lives 3 doors down, had been warned for hanging a kayak rack without authorization. Then there was old Mr. Jenkins, who'd gotten a notice about his bird feeder being attractively excessive. Karen was applying rules that didn't exist and making up new ones along the way. This wasn't just about the dock anymore. It was about control. And she was building something like a paper trail to make it look official. But here's the twist. One of my neighbors, Dan, works in emergency services. Quiet guy, doesn't say much, but he pulled me aside and told me something that raised every hair on my arm. Apparently, the Coast Guard had flagged our neighborhood in their system just last year as a priority zone because of the high number of boating incidents nearby. That dock wasn't just a backup pit, was a critical access point. Blocking it off, even unintentionally, could delay rescue operations by minutes that people in the water might not have. And yet, Karen kept pushing. She told anyone who questioned her that the HOA had entered a new phase of enforcement. But when I checked with the HOA president, he had no idea what she was talking about. It all came to a boiling point one humid Thursday afternoon. Clouds were rolling in from the east, the kind that turn the sky charcoal and make the bay restless. I was just finishing up some yard work when I heard it. The distinct thump, thump, thump of rotor blades cutting through the air. A Coast Guard helicopter was approaching fast, heading straight for the dock. But as it neared, it suddenly slowed, hovering low, circling. I ran toward the shoreline, heart racing, because I knew exactly what they were looking for and exactly what they weren't expecting to find. There were now 3 signs posted along the dock's entrance. Bright, obstructive, and clearly intended to scare off anyone from stepping foot on it. Worse, a makeshift rope barrier had been strung across the ramp, tied between 2 metal poles that hadn't been there before. Karen had taken it even further than I thought. I pulled out my phone and called the Coast Guard contact I'd spoken with earlier, letting him know the landing zone was blocked. His tone went from calm to urgent within seconds. As I was on the call, Karen appeared like clockwork, fast down the path in her signature visor and clipboard in hand. She didn't look panicked. She looked pleased. I asked her what she was doing, and she told me flat out the dock had been decommissioned for community reasons. I could hardly believe it. She claimed she had filed a notice, though she couldn't say with whom. When I told her the Coast Guard was trying to land due to a marine accident in the bay, her expression didn't even change. She just muttered something about how they'll have to find another spot. Behind us, the chopper circled again. I could see one of the crew members pointing down at the dock. Karen stood her ground like she owned it. But what she didn't realize was that her false authority was about to collide head-on with real federal jurisdiction, and everyone was watching. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more out of hand, the second twist hit. Fast as the Coast Guard chopper veered off to circle once more, a Sheriff's Department boat came speeding up the channel. Flashing lights, radio chatter, the works. I figured someone from the Coast Guard must have called for assistance after realizing they couldn't land. But the real shock came when 2 uniformed deputies stepped off and walked straight up the path, not toward me, but toward Karen. Apparently, someone not me had reported a public safety violation tied to interference with federal operations. The rope barrier, the signs, and even the new poles were now part of an official investigation. Karen's eyes darted around as the deputies asked for her name and any permits she might have had for restricting the dock. She kept flipping through her clipboard, mumbling something about HOA consent. But it was clear she didn't expect this level of pushback. But that wasn't all, just as the deputies were talking to her. A neighbor from across the canal, a guy named Paul, came storming down the walkway holding a tablet. He was red in the face and clearly furious. Turns out, Paul had surveillance cameras pointed at the waterline for boat traffic canned. He had footage from earlier in the week. It showed Karen drilling in those new metal posts herself, late at night, with a flashlight between her teeth. She hadn't just reported changes, she physically altered the dock without permission. The deputies took one look at the footage and asked Karen to step aside. She still insisted she had the right, repeating the phrase community safety, like it was some kind of legal shield. Meanwhile, the chopper had pulled back even farther, delaying their rescue plans. That's when one of the deputies spoke into his radio, requesting clearance to remove the barriers immediately. The entire dock had just shifted from neighborhood drama to a federal-level situation, and Karen had no idea how deep she'd dug herself in. The tension finally snapped as the deputies moved in, cutting down the rope barrier and pulling the signs off the dock one by one. The Coast Guard chopper circled one last time before making its descent. With the path now clear, they landed swiftly and efficiently, right on the mark. A rescue boat pulled in moments later, transferring an injured kayaker who had been stranded in open water. The medics rushed him up the dock, and even in the chaos, I could see the gratitude on their faces. That landing might have saved a life, and it almost didn't happen because of Karen's stunt. Karen stood frozen, no longer holding that air of authority she usually carried. Her clipboard dangled by her side like it had lost all power. 1 of the deputies handed her a citation, not an arrest, but a formal warning for obstruction of emergency services and unauthorized modification of federally designated property. She looked stunned, like she'd finally realized this wasn't an HOA issue, it was real. It's with real consequences. But just as things started settling down and the neighborhood gathered, relieved and murmuring, the final twist dropped. The HOA President Mr. Lewis showed up at the edge of the crowd, holding a file folder. He'd been away the past few days, but after hearing about the situation, he dug into the recent HOA records. Inside the folder was a document Karen had submitted, a fabricated dock restriction proposal she claimed had been approved. Except it wasn't. The signatures were copied, and the approval page had never even been presented at a board meeting. She'd forged HOA authorization to carry out her own agenda. The look on her face when Mr. Lewis confronted her was something I won't forget. The neighbors, the Coast Guard, even the deputies were all listening as the truth came out. Karen didn't just act out of line. She faked approval, lied to the community, and nearly risked a life doing it. And that's when we realized the dock was never the real issue. It was just the place where all her power plays finally ran out of space.